Well, people don't just vanish into thin air. It defies the laws of science. There has to be more to the story.
But for more than a decade, the families of two young boys who disappeared after walking out of school have been plagued by that question. What happened to Mark and Bryan? Continuing now her Unsolved series, here's Katie Jeffries.
This story is unlike any other we have done so far in this series because it is not considered a homicide, but rather a missing persons case. Two people to be exact. Mark Degner and Bryan Hayes, two young boys that in 2005 walked away from Paxon Middle School and were never seen again. No traces, no suspects, and more than 12 years later, no idea where Mark Degner and Bryan Hayes could be. The last place they were seen was Paxon Middle School around 1:30 on February 10th, 2005.
One made a disturbance so that the other one could get out of class, and the two boys simply walked out of the back of the school, through the baseball grounds and out of the back gate. It was crazy.
When they didn't come home, Mark and Bryan's families called authorities and began searching, chasing down tip after tip.
You can imagine, I mean, you just run from one place to the other, you know, any sighting, anything.
Angie remembers running through the woods, searching through vacant houses. It was the beginning of a long journey for Mark and Bryan's families that would be full of questions with no answers. Did they run away? Were they taken? Are they alive? Mark and Bryan were both somewhat new to the area when they started at Paxon Middle School. Both loved animals, both looking to make friends. Bryan was classified as bipolar and developmentally delayed. They were just 13 and 12 years old respectively. Now they would both be 25. These are age-progressed photos of what the boys may look like today. Bryan's family says he always had a lot of freckles, especially in the summer. And for Mark,
Spoke with this very southern drawl that just made you laugh anytime he opened his mouth. He was just a fun-loving kid.
they know the boys left the school on their own. But were they really planning to run away? Bryan's mother has her doubts.
No money, no food, no nothing. I mean, if you're going to run away, you prepare something.
They didn't even take their jackets with them in February. Angie wonders that after their plan to leave the school, did something or someone cross their path?
I honestly believe in my heart that if Mark and Bryan had the ability and the free will to let us know that they were okay, there's not a doubt in my mind that they wouldn't do so. And so, unfortunately, that means the reality sinks in that they are, in my mind, very likely held against their will.
Sergeant Dan Jansen with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office says there was never evidence collected that indicated a homicide, so they are continuing to work this as a missing persons case. Over the years, they have vetted thousands of tips.
But every little bit helps on a timeline. So if we can squeeze that timeline down to just a narrow window, then that kind of helps us in revealing some of the facts of the case.
But JSO says they will not stop looking, and neither will the families.
At one point, there was a sighting in South Florida, and we actually traveled down to South Florida to take a look at that, but it didn't pan out. We hold on to hope, just like the family, that these two boys will be found one day alive in some kind of care.
Aileen Hayes says she still finds herself scanning faces in crowds. Even on a trip to North Carolina, she thought maybe she spotted Bryan working at a McDonald's off the interstate.
And he looked so much like Bryan from the back that I asked the manager to bring him to the front so I could look at him. But it wasn't him.
And trying to remember, the boys are not boys anymore.
It's hard to change that mindset, and that's why we continuously, we've had to stop calling them boys. Right. They're not. They're young men. They're grown men out there now.
All their families want is to see them again.
My heart tells me that he's alive, but he's not able to right now come home on his own.
And JSO says if Mark and Bryan see this story, they want them to know that they're not in any trouble with the law. Officers just want to know if they're okay, and they can help reunite them with their families. And if you know anything at all about the disappearance of Mark Degner and Bryan Hayes, please call JSO or Crime Stoppers right there, 866-845-TIPS. You can remain anonymous.